It's always worse when it happens on a journey, or during something you were really looking forward to. The worst time I can remember was on my Year 9 school residential. It was way after midnight, and everyone else in my dorm was already asleep. I was alone in the dark. I lay there on the bottom bunk, gradually feeling it get worse and worse, praying to fall asleep, just so that I could escape. I went to the University of York to speak to Barry Wright, a professor of child mental health and team member at COMIC, Child-Oriented Mental Health Intervention Centre. I wanted to find out about how mental health services in the UK are funded.
Okay, well, the government funds mental health services through a variety of different ways. During periods of austerity, all that money goes down. So over the last 5, 6, 7 years, or since the financial crash in 2008, a lot of the government money's gone down, a lot of the needs are going up, and a large proportion of the local authority money has gone down. So there's been an increase in mental health need, with more young people harming themselves, much higher rates of anxiety, more young people with eating disorders, at the same time as a reduction in funding. So there's, as a result, been a massive increase in stress for the professionals in those services and a big increase in waiting lists and a lot of negativity around all that.
I found some young people similar to my own age who were willing to talk to me and share some of their experiences.
I have depression and anxiety, and I have had it since I was about 11 years old. I actually started self-harming, which was really, really difficult. I didn't tell anybody about that until one day I just had a complete panic attack over it in school. My parents were actually divorced, so I live with my dad. And because he's my first point of contact, they had to call him, and his reaction wasn't very good. Because my brother died quite a few years ago, and so the concept of him thinking that, you know, I could hurt myself and possibly, you know, injure myself to the point of actually dying was a really, really, you know, hard thing for him to comprehend, and I can accept that, but he wasn't very supportive because of it.
I would say definitely my school environment, because it was really high stress, really high pressure, and it was also like quite cliquey. And I would say that I would like see people having a conversation at school, like in the hall or something, waiting to go into a lesson, and I would just be like, I don't understand how people like have a conversation and just have a laugh and relax. Like, I didn't understand it at all.
Well, it often feels as if I can't actually breathe properly, and it feels really, really heavy on my lungs, and that, well, makes it worse because it makes me feel like I'm hyperventilating. So then I'll panic more, and yeah, there have been some cases where I've actually fainted. It's like a bit of a daze, really, not feeling as if I'm actually there properly.
Depressive spirals are quite, they go down and down and down, and just when you think you've hit the rock bottom, you sink another level. I've heard it described quite a few ways. Probably the best is like a stone just sinking through layers and layers of deep water.
My anxiety raises, and, you know, my actual depression itself raises during exam time. I feel the pressure a lot from various different places, so, you know, I have quite a lot of siblings and they've all been very successful. You know, in turn, like I say, that does build the pressure an awful lot. My panic attacks get worse and more frequent, and I'll wake up every morning and think, oh, you know, what's the point? You know, why am I doing this? And I'd be so much happier if I didn't have to. And a big reason why I started self-harming was because I really did, you know, hate myself. I couldn't stand, you know, looking in the mirror every morning, and I know that sounds really depressing, but I really didn't like, you know, the way I was, the way that I thought people perceived me. I thought other people thought I was ugly, that I was fat, and that my personality was just a bit boring and stuff.
I'm perfectly fine standing up and talking to people. And I get nervous while I'm doing it, but beforehand that's perfectly fine. But at the same time, it's like the small things, like going to a band rehearsal, or or meeting up with people in the street.
I was just beginning my journey, but everyone I talked to were all at different stages of their own. Each story was so different, and so were the methods of how they got help and began their treatments. I asked Professor Barry Wright about the different treatments for different mental health problems.
For anxiety, the commonest treatments really are either relaxation, meditation, mindfulness. If it becomes more serious, then it would usually go to something that people call cognitive behaviour therapy, which is really just a fancy term for understanding that your thoughts and your feelings, emotions, and your sensations all interact all the time. Very gradually you help young people understand the vicious cycles and help to manage them. As a child psychiatrist, I would very, very rarely use a drug treatment to treat anxiety. For depression, it's slightly different, because if it's mild depression, then again you're wanting young people to develop coping strategies and self-awareness and self-insight and to be able to manage those things themselves. If it's very severe though, and you're not eating and you're not going out of the house and you're sort of paralysed and just lying in bed, then sometimes medication can give a little boost just to help you get access to the talking therapy.
The first treatment or help that I got was I went to see this counsellor, and she basically, from the first session, said to me, "You got to stop. It's all in your head." She basically said that I had PTSD. She was sort of in a joking way from my old school, and that was where all of that was coming from, and that now I'd left, I could be in something new and like more true to myself. And she suggested that I should try medication, and at first I didn't want to, because I didn't, obviously, like the typical thing of like, oh, I don't want to be on medication, but it was really helpful. Someone told me before, the thing about like going on medication for depression with antidepressants is that you lose the really bad stuff and you get a middle ground, but you do lose the best stuff. So like the most exciting things in life and the sort of like thrill feelings. And when she told me, it really pissed me off, but then it was true. It does sort of dull things out and everything sort of becomes a bit the same.
I think if some of my friends knew more about it, I'd like to think that they'd be quite supportive, because I know that there are a lot more people that suffer from it than I think people actually realise. It's not really something that you tend to talk about very often. But in terms of how I feel, how it makes me feel about myself, I think people are more willing to talk about, you know, physical health and, you know, diseases and stuff like that. But I think it's important that people do realise that, you know, chemical imbalance in the brain is just as important as anything else, as, you know, breaking your arm or any kind of actual physical illness.
It did help with my depression. It helped me sort of feel more motivated, more open, feel like there were more possibilities. I remember one day sort of thinking like, oh, actually, like the world isn't so like isolated from me, like I'm a part of it, instead of feeling like more of an outsider.
Often it can make you feel pretty crap about yourself. But then like I kind of came out of it, not fully, but I've sort of started to come out of it a couple of years ago, and that since then the highs have been better and there haven't been very many lows at all. Sleep kind of is the buffer between feeling absolutely dreadful about yourself and about everything in your life to waking up the next morning and it all being alright and birds singing outside and the world's still there, kind of thing.
Margot, Daisy and Daniel are the first people I've really spoken to about my mental health. It makes such a difference to talk to people your own age, who have shared similar experiences to you. Even if they're people you'll never see again, even if they aren't your family, next door neighbour or best friend, sometimes it feels like forever, like you'll never get through it or escape it. You just have to remember the good stuff while it lasts. Remember, who you are today will be different tomorrow, because we're always changing and growing. Your mental health does not define you, and mine does not define me.